For years after a woman disappeared during a simple weekend camping trip, a phone rang inside a small-town police department in Alberta, Canada. The voice on the other end trembled as it said, "You need to come to the Old Ridge Trail. I think I've found her." Officers arrived within the hour, and what they uncovered beneath the forest floor changed everything the town believed about what happened that night. But to understand what led to this disturbing discovery, we have to go back to the summer of 2019, when a 27-year-old woman named Sarah Mitchell decided to spend one peaceful night under the stars and never came home. Before we go deep into this haunting true story, please support this channel by liking the video, subscribing, leaving a comment, and turning on the notification bell so you don't miss future real-life mysteries like this one. Your support truly keeps these stories alive. Sarah Mitchell wasn't the kind of person who vanished without reason. She was the planner of her friend group, always careful, organized, the one who double-checked the weather before a road trip. Her co-workers at a veterinary clinic in Calgary describe her as bright, gentle, and tough as nails. But that summer, Sarah had been through something that quietly shook her. A painful breakup after a 6-year relationship left her searching for clarity. She told her best friend, "I just need one night away from everything. No phone. No noise. Just me and nature." So on the evening of July 18, 2019, Sarah packed her Jeep with camping gear, a camera, and her golden retriever, Scout. She texted her mother one last time, "I'll be back Sunday morning. Love you." That message was the last anyone ever received from her. When Sarah didn't show up for her shift at the clinic 2 days later, her co-workers assumed she decided to stay longer. But by Tuesday morning, her mother reported her missing. Search teams were dispatched to Waterton Lakes National Park, where she had told friends she was going. Her Jeep was found abandoned near a remote trailhead called Eagle Ridge, doors locked, with her tent and sleeping bag still inside, untouched. There were no signs of a struggle. No blood. No tracks. Even her dog, Scout, was gone. What baffled investigators was that the forest around the campsite showed almost no disturbance, as if Sarah had simply stepped out of existence. Days turned into weeks. The weather worsened, and so did hope. Helicopters scanned miles of wilderness, divers combed nearby lakes, and volunteers trekked through dense brush. But after 40 days, the search was officially suspended. Her family, however, never stopped. Her mother, Linda Mitchell, kept her daughter's room untouched, always leaving a light on in the window, in case Sarah somehow came home. Then, 4 years later, just when the world had forgotten, that phone call came. A man hiking deep into the same forest stumbled upon something strange protruding from the ground, a worn leather boot, and beneath it, fragments of bone. He immediately called the authorities. When detectives arrived, they realized the location of the discovery was miles away from where Sarah's Jeep had been found. And what they uncovered buried beside her remains was something that made the lead investigators step back in shock. Something that hinted Sarah might not have been alone that night after all. The area where Sarah Mitchell's remains were found was almost 5 miles from her original campsite, a stretch of forest so thick it would have taken hours to reach on foot. Detectives marked off the perimeter and began a full forensic sweep. Within hours, investigators discovered something half buried beside the shallow grave, a rusted camping stove, and beside it, a small digital camera, its casing cracked from exposure. When the forensic team cleaned and powered it using lab equipment, they recovered 4 photos that were still intact. 3 showed what appeared to be Sarah's campsite, her tent, her dog Scout lying beside the campfire, and a selfie of Sarah smiling into the camera just before nightfall. But the 4th photo was different. It was taken after dark. And in the background, just behind her tent, a faint silhouette stood among the trees. The figure wasn't wearing hiking gear. It looked like a man, standing still, watching. Lead investigator Detective Aaron Levesque later told reporters, "We don't know if Sarah took that photo intentionally or if it was accidental. But whoever was out there with her that night was never identified." The discovery reignited national interest in the case. News outlets replayed footage from 2019, interviews with her family, and even her mother's tearful pleas. Online, people began piecing together theories: hikers who'd vanished in the same area, unreported sightings, strange noises at night. But the most disturbing piece came from a local man named Peter Cormick, a retired forestry worker who claimed he'd seen a blue Jeep parked along a service road on the same night Sarah vanished. He told detectives, "I remember it because there was another vehicle parked right behind hers, a white pickup. I assumed they were camping together." Police had never logged any second vehicle during their 2019 investigation. With the discovery of Sarah's remains and the mysterious second vehicle claim, the case was officially reopened in August 2023. Detective Levesque and his team began cross-referencing every registered white pickup spotted in the park surveillance cameras that weekend. It was then that they found a hit, a truck registered to a man named Dylan Carter, a 31-year-old outdoor guide who'd led tours in the same region. When police visited Carter's property, he denied ever meeting Sarah. But his social media posts from 2019 painted a different story: photos of him camping at Eagle Ridge, taken the very same weekend she disappeared. And in one of those pictures, behind him, blurred and distant, was a yellow camping tent identical to Sarah's. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered a connection no one had noticed before. Carter and Sarah followed the same outdoor enthusiast group on Facebook. Messages recovered from her old laptop showed she'd posted a question in that group days before her trip. "Anyone familiar with camping spots near Eagle Ridge that are quiet but safe for solo hikers?" The first person to reply to that post was Dylan Carter, and his reply had been chilling in hindsight. "I know a perfect spot. You'll be totally alone out there." Forensic analysis of the soil where Sarah's body was found revealed a surprising detail: traces of motor oil mixed into the dirt. Investigators later confirmed it matched the same grade of oil used in Carter's pickup truck. And beside her remains, tucked under a layer of leaves, they also found a torn fragment of nylon rope, consistent with restraints. Detectives were careful. There was still no proof of murder. But for the first time in 4 years, they had something resembling a suspect and motive. When questioned again under a formal warrant, Dylan Carter began to shake. He insisted he'd never met Sarah in person, but when investigators showed him the photo recovered from her camera, his face went pale. Because the blurred silhouette standing behind her tent was wearing the same plaid jacket Carter had been photographed in that very weekend. When detectives confronted Dylan Carter with the photo evidence, his initial calm began to crumble. He rubbed his palms against his jeans, stared at the table, and whispered, "I don't know how that picture exists." Detective Levesque leaned forward. "Dylan, that photo was taken the night Sarah Mitchell disappeared. You were there. You need to tell us what happened." For several minutes, Carter said nothing. Then, with his voice trembling, he finally muttered, "I was there. But I didn't kill her." According to Dylan's statement, he'd met Sarah through the online camping forum a week before her trip. He claimed she seemed nervous about going alone, so he offered to keep an eye from a distance, saying he'd be camping in the same area that weekend. He followed her Jeep into the park on July 18, 2019, parking a short distance away. He admitted he watched her set up her tent that evening, but insisted he never approached. Detectives didn't buy it. When they showed him the evidence, the oil traces, the rope, the proximity of her remains, he broke again. "I tried to help her," he said. "She was screaming that something was out there." Carter described hearing Sarah's dog bark frantically late that night. He grabbed a flashlight and ran toward her campsite. According to his account, he found her tent ripped open, her belongings scattered, and no sign of her or the dog. "I called out for her," he told police. "Then I heard a sound behind me, like something big moving through the brush. I panicked. I just ran." Detective Levesque pressed, "Why didn't you call for help?" Carter said he was scared no one would believe him, that he'd look guilty being there without her permission. He claimed he left the area before dawn, never returning. Forensic experts immediately noticed holes in his confession. The soil where Sarah's remains were found contained no animal tracks large enough to suggest a wild attack. And the rope fragment recovered beside her remains bore fibers matching the straps from Carter's camping bag. More damning still, phone tower data showed his device had remained within half a kilometer of the burial site for nearly 6 hours that night. When detectives confronted him with that data, he broke down. In a moment of exhaustion and guilt, Carter gave a second statement. He admitted that he'd gone to Sarah's campsite after midnight, claiming he just wanted to talk. But when she realized he'd been watching her, an argument broke out. She demanded he leave and threatened to call the police. He panicked. "She grabbed her phone, and I tried to stop her," he said. "I didn't mean to hurt her. I swear I didn't." According to his confession, during the struggle she fell backward, hitting her head on a rock near the campfire. He froze. And instead of calling for help, he buried her in the woods, terrified his actions would ruin his life. "I kept thinking I'd go to prison for an accident," he said through tears. The confession explained some things, but not everything. Her injuries, when analyzed, didn't fully match a fall. The fractures on her ribs and the positioning of her remains suggested she'd been restrained before she died. And what investigators couldn't explain was her dog, Scout. No trace of him was ever found near the burial site. Not a collar, not a bone, nothing. Weeks later, while detectives were building their case for trial, a wildlife ranger stumbled upon something unusual 2 miles from the burial site. A torn piece of blue fabric snagged on a branch next to a shallow animal burrow. Inside it lay a dog's collar. The tag read, "Scout." But what froze investigators was what lay beside it, a small metallic USB drive, weathered but intact, sealed inside a Ziploc bag. When authorities plugged it in back at the lab, they found a single video file, time-stamped the night Sarah vanished. The footage began with a shaky handheld shot of a campfire. Sarah's voice could be heard laughing softly, calling out to her dog. Then, from behind the camera, another voice, male, said, "You sure you'll be okay out here alone?" The man in the video wasn't Dylan Carter. It was someone else entirely. The discovery of that USB drive changed everything. Investigators gathered in the dimly lit evidence room as the video began to play. The date stamp read July 18, 2019, 9:14 p.m. Sarah Mitchell's laughter filled the speakers, a carefree sound, echoing against the faint crackle of her campfire. She was setting up her tent while her golden retriever, Scout, trotted in circles nearby. For the first minute, everything seemed normal. Then, a man's voice spoke from behind the camera. "You sure you'll be okay out here alone?" Sarah turned, slightly startled but smiling politely. "Yeah, I'll be fine. It's just one night." The voice replied, "All right, just checking. People get lost up here all the time." The video ended abruptly, the camera shaking as if it was hastily shoved into a bag. When investigators compared the audio to Dylan Carter's voice, it didn't match. The tone, pitch, and accent were different. Using enhanced forensics, audio specialists extracted a clearer voice print. The match came within 24 hours. To Ranger Mark Collins, a 42-year-old forest officer who had been on patrol the night Sarah vanished. The revelation stunned the investigative team. Collins had even participated in the original 2019 search operation and had given statements claiming he'd never seen Sarah Mitchell in person. But now, his voice placed him at her campsite that night. When police arrived at Collins' residence with a warrant, he appeared calm, almost resigned. His cabin was filled with hunting gear, park maps, and old ranger reports. But what shocked investigators was a hidden box under his floorboards, containing personal items belonging to missing hikers from the same area, dating back nearly a decade. Among them, Sarah Mitchell's bracelet, still caked in dirt. Collins was immediately taken into custody. During questioning, he denied harming her, insisting the meeting on camera was innocent, that he was just checking on campers like he was trained to do. But under pressure, his story began to unravel. He eventually admitted that he'd visited Sarah's campsite twice that night. He said she looked uneasy the second time and accused him of spying. When she threatened to report him, he lost control. He claimed the encounter got physical, but insisted her death wasn't supposed to happen. According to the forensic reconstruction, Sarah likely died between 10 o'clock and 11 p.m. from blunt force trauma and strangulation. Collins had buried her in a secondary location, covering his tracks by returning later to remove evidence, which explained why her body was found miles from the original site. Dylan Carter, the outdoor guide, had been telling the truth about finding her campsite in chaos, but his fear and silence allowed the real killer to go free for 4 years. The USB drive had likely been hidden by Collins himself and later unearthed by Wildlife Movement, eventually discovered beside Scout's collar. Investigators now believe that Scout may have attacked Collins during the struggle, which explained the missing dog. Blood traces found on the collar matched Collins' DNA. In early 2024, Mark Collins was charged with second-degree murder, obstruction of justice, and abuse of authority. During trial, he refused to look at Sarah's family. Her mother, Linda Mitchell, gave a heartbreaking statement to the court. For 4 years, I kept a light on every night, hoping she'd walk back through the door. Now I know that light was the only thing keeping her memory alive. Collins was sentenced to life imprisonment with no chance of parole for 25 years. Months later, a group of hikers reported seeing a golden retriever wandering deep in the forest near Eagle Ridge. Malnourished, scarred, but alive. It was Scout. Authorities confirmed his microchip matched Sarah's records. Her mother adopted him, saying, "He brought her home in his own way." Sarah Mitchell's story is a haunting reminder of how quickly trust, isolation, and fear can intertwine in the wild. It also exposed how one man, sworn to protect, used his badge to prey. Yet, in the end, it was her courage, and her loyal dog, that led to the truth. If you've made it this far into the story, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to support this channel. Your engagement helps bring more real stories like this to light, stories that deserve to be remembered, and victims who deserve justice.